Today's data packed with fresh reports lays bare the dark truth of Putin's special military operation, but first, these gut-wrenching questions. Imagine if these figures are spot on. How is Putin's dictatorial empire crumbling into rubble? You might be wondering how this all became possible. Let's dive deep into the data, where every number weaves a painful story. The data clearly states, in November 2025, a second strike on the Volgograd oil refinery. What if Putin's Iranian-shaped drones, raining down on Ukrainian soil, forced Ukraine to develop the Lutiy drones with a 2,000 kilometers range? These drones are now piercing deep into Russia. Think about the impact reaching everywhere, like a boomerang coming right back. Over 1.1 million Russian soldiers killed or wounded. Is this turning Putin's victory into emptiness in millions of Russian homes where mothers wait endlessly for letters? The data shows this number keeps climbing daily, like an endless chain silently shattering families. The data screams it out. 20% refining capacity shut down. Over half of 38 major refineries destroyed. Is Putin's assault pushing the Russian economy into a fuel-starved desert, where trucks grind to a halt and factories forget how to breathe? You might be thinking, how did this devastation spread, and what's the fallout on everyday life, like winter nights without heaters? On November 14, 2025, a drone attack on the Novorossiysk oil terminal, shipments frozen solid. Did Ukraine's long-range drones clamp Putin's Black Sea gateway in a blockade like Ukraine's own, where container ships get stuck in the fog? According to the data, this port is now paralyzed, the bleeding of trade won't stop, and export arteries are drying up. November 15, 2025, fresh strike on the Saratov refinery, which sustains the lives of 200,000 to 220,000 Russians amid the total casualties. Has Ukraine turned Putin's oil machines into a torrent of flames, where fires lick the sky? This attack was so precise, like targeting every detail etched in the data, and now layers of smoke are enveloping cities. The data estimates 1.4 million casualties. Is Putin's peace rhetoric trapping Russia in its own backyard with Ukraine's unmanned systems, where empty soldiers' boots litter the streets? Imagine, what stories from millions of families does this number hide, quietly weeping in the shadows? Fuel crisis since August 2025, daily production cuts of 500,000 barrels. Does this prove Putin's army is now gasping in its own cities without power or fuel, where lights flicker but vehicles stay silent? These lines in the data paint pictures of empty tanks on Russian roads and lines that never end. The data notes November 13th attacks with flamingo rockets and Lutiy. What if these drones are delivering sentences to ordinary Russians for Putin's crimes, or a message of freedom cracking the walls of propaganda? Watch the full video, the secrets will unfold. These questions will force you to think, because every layer of data uncovers a new truth, and every answer is a step toward peace. Friends, the data testifies itself. Lutiy drones are targeting refineries like Volgograd and Saratov in November 2025. A direct riposte to Putin's Shahed 136s. Putin shouts it's just a special operation, but the data roars it's Ukraine's solid counterstrike, crippling Russia's oil infrastructure by 20% capacity. My analysis, Putin started the invasion, so Ukraine struck deep into enemy territory with these 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers range drones. This isn't aggression. It's a defensive war, like a nation in history clutching its borders. These data details show every strike is part of a calculated strategy, slashing Russia's supply chain. But Russian brothers, this suffering is Putin's gift, not Ukraine's. You might be wondering when this cycle breaks. The data says Ukraine's resilience is the key. My take, Ukraine took the right step defending its soil and, with NATO's help, teaching the world that aggressors get stalled. Now, let's turn to user sources. According to Kiev Post, Ukrainian drones have knocked out 20% of refinery capacity, while Moscow downplays it to just 6%. Wikipedia notes production drops since August 2025 due to drone strikes, with over 50% damage to 38 major refineries. Russia Matters reports 1,118,000 Russian soldiers killed and wounded per UK Ministry of Defense. These reports are grounded in on-the-ground intel. Check them yourself because the data nails it. You might be wondering how these figures are so precise because they're rooted in field reports. My two-line analysis, these numbers tie the Novorossiysk and Saratov attacks together, clearly showing Putin's 25% oil revenue now staggering from the fuel crisis. Ordinary Russians are bearing the brunt of rationing, which props up Putin's war. This isn't just economic pain. It's the seed of social tension. My take: America and NATO empowered Ukraine with weapons, easing Europe's oil threats from Russia's economic pinch. You might be wondering why these strikes are hitting Russians. Hear it from the date November 14, 2025, Novorossiysk oil terminal, where ships and warehouses were obliterated, supplies halted. Imagine Alexei, that ordinary Russian worker, toiling at the port in the data's mobilization backdrop, suddenly engulfed in smoke and darkness. His family now endures cold nights without fuel, like the direct hit from the fuel cuts described in the data. Then November 15th, Saratov refinery, where families queue for fuel in the shadow of 1.1 million casualties. The data reveals this strike not only torched the plant but spread blackouts to nearby villages. November 13th, Flamingo and Lutiy attacks, the data says focused on military sites, but sparks reached civilian areas. My probe says Putin dragged millions of Russians to the front, but now their home oil plants are burning. This hardship belongs to everyday Russians who got tangled in Putin's false propaganda, not criminals. Like an inflated balloon claiming victory, but inside just the black fog of fuel shortages. Russian brothers, you're not Putin, you deserve peace like Ukraine. These data events are linked like a chain, paying the price for Putin's decisions. My take: NATO's strategy cornered Russia, but diplomacy is key to easing civilian pain. Ukraine's success will bring relief to all. Data's clear proof: Lutiy drones are ripping through 50% of refineries in 2025. With INS and AI navigation, Putin boasts our defenses are impenetrable, but they cross 2,000 kilometers to hit 2 men. My analysis: the data's 1 point per million casualty estimate unmasks Putin's quick win claims because now Russian production is stalled, feeding T-90 tanks and submarines. This is no coincidence. It's the direct backlash to Putin's incursion. The data timeline shows strikes ramping up monthly like a growing storm. History turns full circle, like Hitler's blitzkrieg grinding to a halt. Putin's operation is now eating dust from Ukraine's drones. You might be wondering what Putin's next excuse will be. The data says the walls of lies are crumbling. My take: Ukraine's ingenuity, bolstered by American tech, is exposing Putin's falsehoods. True strength lies in democracy. Data's hint: long-range strikes by the 14th Unmanned Aerial Systems Regiment made possible only with NATO training and U.S. intel. Kiev Post says 20% capacity loss. Wikipedia notes fuel crisis because NATO provided satellite intel, empowering AI guidance. My observation: America fueled these drones so Ukraine could capitalize on 1.1 million Russian losses. From the data's Ukraine attacks, they're shredding Russian logistics without a single NATO boot on the ground. These data hints show how deep the partnership runs, from satellites to training. Russian civilians: NATO isn't your enemy, Putin is. Think: without this support, how could Ukraine's successes even happen? My take: NATO and America took the right stance, arming Ukraine to shield the democratic world from Putin's expansionism. Data's climax: the November 15, 2025 Saratov strike, where over 200,000 lives were upended, but the data confirms it. Putin's final lie: we're conquering, but beyond 975 kilometers, Ukraine proved the burden of attack falls back on Russia itself. My analysis: these drones aren't just tools. They're symbols of Ukraine's grit amid 1.155 million combat losses. Putin's crimes: millions dead, displaced, now boomeranging home. These data lines are a warning, like history's lesson repeating. Final question: if the data's true, when will Putin stop? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you agree with us, share this video with your friends.